with the and this is an official welcome to the webinar. We're really excited to talk about different tips for scaling for platform teams. And to start off with introductions, if you've onboarded with Getro in the past couple of years, I'm probably a familiar face. And if not, I'm Johnny. I'm a CSM here at Getro. I work really closely with our customers going through implementation and onboarding. So if you're a future customer, then hello in advance as well. And I'm sure you're not here to learn about me, though. I'm sure you're here to learn about our panelists, James and Lena, and I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves.
Thanks, Johnny. Very briefly on me, I'm the talent manager at CCamp. So I'm part of the platform team here. I support our portfolio post-investment on everything kind of talent, network, and people related. We're a pre-seed and seed investor. We invest anything up to $1 million in a sort of anything from angel to seed. And our portfolio now consists of over 500 portfolio companies. And our latest fund is $180 million. We're about midway through deploying that at the moment. Our platform team is fairly broad. I cover the kind of the talent and network elements, but we have 5 people in our core team.
Yeah, also happy to introduce myself. Lena, I'm head of platform at First Momentum. We're a pre-seed, a deep tech B2B fund from Germany, but investing across Europe. We're the opposite. We have a smaller portfolio and also a smaller platform team, which is really typical, I think, for platform roles. In general, it's me and one intern, but a lot of support and stuff also run by our investment team and the deal leads. We're currently investing out of Fund 2, a 50 million fund and our tickets are usually between 200K to $1 million. My background is pretty diverse. I've actually run my own startup as a founder. That's also how I know First Momentum, but originally studied Middle Eastern studies, wanted to become a spy. So yeah, total different and a lot of profiles in the VC space.
Awesome. Thanks so much, both. And as we get started with the actual agenda and content of the webinar, I just wanted everyone to know that we are recording this. So if you're joining a few minutes late, or if you just sort of want to refer back to this later, it will be recorded and sent out. So if you have any questions as well, or if there's something that you're curious about James, Lena, feel free to add it into the chat, because we'll, if we have time, be happy to go through some Q&A at the very end. So for the agenda, I'm sure you've had a chance to sort of review the invitation, but we're going to focus on sort of any and everything related to scalability and platform teams. And these are really the big areas that we thought would be really beneficial for us to discuss, because James and Lena are pretty much experts in this area, I'd like to say, just from my conversations with them. So first, I'm sure you all have a question, regardless of actually the size of your team, is how do you balance it all? Like, as a platform person, there's sort of so many things that you're juggling. So what are tips and tricks to really ensure that you're providing the most tailored support to companies without maybe sacrificing yourself and overextending yourself in the process? Secondly, data. So what is the data that you should be focused on, and sort of what are some strategies to sort of approach data in your own experience as a platform person? And then how do you build a community, and some other really spicy questions related to community that I'm excited for us to talk about together. And then lastly, we'll talk a bit about tools, because there's lots of different ways to approach tools for your team, but regardless of the size of the team. And because we have such a varied background with James and Lena, it'll be really cool to sort of see their different perspectives on ways that you can invest in the right tools for your team. So without further ado, let's jump right into how do you balance support and scalability. And I'd love to start off by learning a little bit more about scalability from James's perspective, because I know that there's sort of lots being done on the productization portion, and for both of the firms, it's something that it's discussed a lot. But I'll pass it over to James now to get his take on how do you ensure that smaller companies feel supported.
Yeah, sure. By nature of our portfolio, the vast majority of portfolio companies are quite small. Same will be for Lena, right? So our job really is to ensure that those businesses get to Series A and beyond. And frankly, once they get to those later stages and larger ticket sizes, there will be investors on the cap table that will be sort of purpose built to support those larger organizations. So we are really in the business of helping businesses build from 0 to 1. So I think as a result, you can spread your time slightly more thinly across a wider variety of companies. As you know, with Seed Camp, the portfolio is really broad. So as a result, like you've got to spend a smaller amount of time with each founding set. But that doesn't mean that you can't add value. And I think the direction that we believe is highly powerful and highly compelling is that network effect. And as a result of having such a large number of founders in the portfolio, it now totals over 1,200 founders that we backed and invested in, and then their subsequent teams. We always know someone and know someone, and so we really play on that element as the value add that we're going for. But it does mean that, especially as a team of one in talent, and every founder needs or ask for talent support, you can quite easily overextend. So for me, I think when I look at my workflows, the biggest thing I look at is, am I doing the same task over and over again? And if I am, how can I find a way of, you could call it productizing or building something that means that you don't have to repeat yourself over and over. So a real easy and obvious example of that is just building a knowledge repository of best practices that you come up against and the learnings that have come from helping multiple founders. And then whilst that's generalist advice, and that will help a long way, you can then get into the sort of nitty gritty with founders on more bespoke challenges that have nuance to them. And I think that's where you unlock the real value. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that bit without going into crazy detail.
Yeah, no, that's really great to hear. And I feel like that's a perfect segue, because when you think about when you have repeatable processes, what can you do to sort of get rid of that repetition? And I know, Lena, you're a big fan of Zapier and sort of other tools when it comes to sort of having those automations incorporated into your own flow as well. So yeah, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what James said. And I think actually we're running in a really similar way, as we're a smaller fund, and my role is like as platform is really broad, running community, but also portfolio support, where we have like diverse sections, and then also supporting on brand and marketing and PR. For us, it's really about, and we're a team of 7. So it's for us, we run a lot on the Pareto principle, so 80-20%, because we really look for, okay, what are the 20% that bring the 80% value, and where should we then also sometimes, but these are really the highlights, go the extra mile. So for me, it's a lot of focus on what we know that really founders need to get right. Or of course, what comes also from the founders. We're investing in technical teams a lot, so they also have bespoke needs compared to the general founder, B2B founder. And also we are a more technical team on the investment side, scientists and engineers, so we can also support in special areas that other funds perhaps cannot as much.
Awesome. No, that's really great perspective. And one question that I was really excited to dive into is, what are the red flags that indicate that you're going maybe too far in either direction, too inefficient with the nitty gritty, or just too generic to actually, for it to be meaningful for your portfolio companies? Like, what are the things that just as a team, you're sort of on the lookout for to make sure that you don't go too far in either direction?
Yeah, it's very easy to go in either direction, right? And I think anyone that's got into a platform role or is starting or going through that journey will kind of learn by going one way or the other. I know when I started at Seed Camp, I went and dove straight into every problem and tried to save the world with every founder, and quickly realized that wasn't workable in the long run. I think, long story short, is you don't want to build a dependency. You want to create value, but you don't want to build dependency from your founders. You want to make sure, especially in talent, speaking from that experience, you want to ensure that they have the tools at their disposal so they can do the best job, but they have the muscle internally to scale, right? Because otherwise they will fall short at the later stages of their journey. So I think that's really important. I think the other point that I want to raise is, how do you even know that there are red flags? And that is something that, for me, the way I've identified those is by logging pretty much everything I do. So I have a CRM where I log every single interaction I have with every founder and every portfolio company, and categorize those almost obsessively. It's probably a little bit overkill, but what it does mean is I can see quite granular levels of information about my workflow, and I can look back at that over a month or a year and see where I'm working. And I think, in our example of Seed Camp, we have 6 funds, and we're currently, midway through deploying Fund 6. You want to make sure that as a platform team, that you're staggering your time in a sort of staircase method, with more time being deployed in your more recent funds. That's the most logical allocation of time. And so when you look back at the data, you can make sure that you're actually adhering to those principles. So that's my approach. But I'm still figuring it out, 2 years in.
Yeah, and I think everyone is always like, discussing this. I think these are 2 points, like the inefficiency and the generic solutions. Definitely, if you hear that what you're doing as support is what every other VC fund in your space or competitor is doing, then probably it's a generic solution. Sorry. I also believe from a product perspective, you can definitely get some data into how are you, what are the initiatives, how you're supporting your portfolio, and then what is the outcome? Is it used, whatever it may be, how is the usage? How do founders value the initiative? So I think we will come to this later, but there's a lot of data you can gather depending on the initiative you're running.
Excellent. Well, that is the perfect segue over to our next topic, which is data-driven platform strategies. And this little quote that we have here, I loved when it came up in our session, that NPS is a vanity metric. And I'd love for Lena to speak a little bit more into that. And it really ties in well with the question of what are the top data points or things that you look really closely at when you think of what do we prioritize?
Yeah, and I think NPS is a highly debated KPI in general, not only in VC. So I think it's an easy, or a way we try to make things easier, but in the end, it's not that easy. For how to be data-driven, it really depends. It depends on the initiatives you run. It depends on the goals and targets you have as a fund, and for support you have for your portfolio companies, or also, if you run different stuff. For example, we also run communities. There basically the top data points look totally different. So to give you an example, for portfolio support, we run sales support, hiring support as well. And there, for both of them, I would say we track intros. So what are valuable intros we make to our portfolio companies? That's one top data point for us. And then we also, of course, track the outcome. Did it turn leads or something? But for the community part, we look more at output. For example, when we look at our Venture Scout community, which is from startup operators to researchers, people that are scouting for us deals, but also just being spokespeople, representing us, and just adding value to the entire First Momentum family. There, it's for us any value that is brought to us as a fund, to our portfolio companies, to the ecosystem in general. So I think it really depends on the things you run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think I can echo pretty much everything Lena said. within that. I know there will probably be people on the call that use NPS, so it may be an unpopular opinion that we share, but we both share that NPS is a balancing metric within VC specifically. I think if you look at this from a founder perspective, where is the incentive in saying that they do not see value in a venture capital fund that has already invested in them, that they are not adding value, right? You don't want that coming back to you as a founder because it may harm your future success. So I think that for me, the real feedback loop that's vital is the qualitative data that you get from board meetings, founder to investor conversations, where they are not asked, but they proactively share positive feedback about the platform support that they've received. So that's, for me, the gold standard, and is really, really important. I think the other thing, which again sort of harks back to what I was just saying previously, is you need to be kind of informed by your customer, which is the founders, right, in terms of understanding where to take your strategy. And if you go through the whole year without actually logging the tasks that you're completing and the support that you're providing, it's very hard to really quite nicely summarize where your focus is needed to head. So for me, I can, at the end of each year, look at the topics and the functional areas where I'm providing support, and then see whether that matches the proactive work that I'm doing within networking and what have you. So if that misaligns, for example, founders need engineers, right? It's always a big topic. It's normally the number one task that founders come to me with is in that domain area. If I'm spending my time purely networking with salespeople, that's a concern, right? It doesn't align. So I think we need to make sure that we're hearing what the founders are asking for, obviously making sure that we're in a place to add value in that domain, but also making sure that we're not wasting our time outside of the day-to-day founder support topics.
Yeah, and I totally agree with this. And I mean, we always have to keep in mind, in the end, like, our role is to make the company successful. And unfortunately, in our business, we will only see the outcome in 8 to 10 years. This is really unfortunate. So whatever we try there, I think, is to find proxies for basically that long-term goal.
Great. No, it's a really nice perspective, because I feel like it's one of those areas where, yeah, like there's lots of different scores and metrics that are always on people's radars, but understanding like there's different ways to approach it is something that I think is really interesting, and hopefully interesting to everyone tuning in as well. And in a similar vein, and just in my own experience, sort of keeping an ear on the VC sort of platform community, I know that the topic of building community has been a real sort of like hot button topic these days. And there's a lot of sort of curiosity around, okay, like, how do I build a community? What does that look like? And I feel like a really great starting place for this conversation is, should you build a community? Which I'm going to give both James and Lena the credit for this one completely, of sort of, this is the perfect place to start if you're sort of curious about if it's something worthwhile in the first place. And I would love to hear your perspectives on sort of what does that process look like for a fund that's curious about if it's something worthwhile for them or not?
Yeah, I mean, I put there the quote, because really I have so many meetings with other funds where they're like, yeah, we're considering having a community or building a community. So I think it's out there a lot, but it needs to, I mean, it comes down with like also your fund brand, like, who are you as a fund? I think that's the fundamental thing. What is your right to exist? Why you're here, and how are you different to others? This comes also down to what expertise you have. Like, for example, what James also mentioned before about them, like having this network of so many founders. Yeah, of course, then it makes sense to have a community and just bundle that. But it ties back to what are your goals. Do you want to run a community? Can it be a founder community to engage them more, to support them? Is community the right way, or is it for deal sourcing? What is the target? What do you want to achieve? And is this really the right way with your setup? I think there are so many questions you need to ask yourself before.
Yeah, agreed. I think there are a few different elements to community. One is obviously the founder communities, which is what everyone I think gravitates towards when they hear that term. Before I joined Camp, I was a little bit skeptical of them, right? I think like you hear about it a lot. When I've seen Camps, I see the immediate value. We have an advantage in the regard that we have over 1,200 founders within it. So even if you have 10% of engagement within that group, you still have a whole lot of activity. So I think it is an opportunity there, but you don't have to have volume to make a good community, right? Like I think you could have a highly niche community that's bespoke, it's exclusive, and therefore adds value. I think where you can get stuck is if you try to be in the middle, where you're trying to be exclusive, but you've actually got loads of people in there and it's not doing necessarily something unique. So you want to go for one or the other, and you've got to place your advantages as a fund and target your niche and have a real reason and a mission behind what you're building. And again, it kind of comes back to your unique value as a fund. If you're being generic and you're just saying, oh yeah, we've got a founder community, why? And surely there's probably another fund that's done it better. So I think you've really got to play to your advantages in that domain. And yeah, I think the other point I want to raise is, and Lena kind of alluded to this, is there are many other kinds of community that you can have outside of founding communities, right? So I think both Momentum and Seed Camp have angel collectives or to that domain where you have a group of angel investors that can co-invest with the community. And there are many different strategic reasons why those are beneficial, both for your founders and the investment community as a whole, from deal sourcing to additional fundraising for your founders. So there are plenty of opportunities out there to build.
Yeah, and one point I want to add is also, I mean, it's not something you build like just at the side. Community, I think it's highly underestimated how much work it is, because you're running both product business, but also a people's business. So some things, yeah, you can automate, but there's still a high human aspect to it. So just like having one person doing this for 5 hours a week, it's tough.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And I feel like it's a really nice perspective to have, just sort of understanding how much curiosity and sort of momentum there is behind it as a concept right now. And moving on to our last topic, tools and technologies. And with us being a tool and technology ourselves, really excited to learn about sort of the areas that matter the most to you when you think about evaluating tools, and then also what are the tools that you find to be really fundamental to the work that you do. And I know, especially with being funds of such different sizes as well, sort of you're always in the mindset of doing more with less in general, but really understanding like what are tools in your tech stack and sort of how do you approach them. And take it away, Lena. I have you as the quote if you want to take it over.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean that's a bit controversial quote, but I found it super interesting. I previously, as I mentioned, was a founder. I worked before in a B2B startup, and when then joined switching sides for me, I found it really interesting how the VC space works when it comes to new tools, because you think, oh, okay, they're investing and are at the forefront of innovation. And we are, I think, a really already forward-thinking VC fund, but it's there's still room for improvement. I think for me, as a typical small platform team, we need all tools. Like it's one of the things you have to play all the tools that are out there, because otherwise I couldn't do my job at the pace and quality I'm doing it. But as you've mentioned, I mean, a lot of, especially when it comes to community, there is a lot of Zapier at work in general, automating different things to just make it more efficient. And I think this is really, especially for smaller platform teams, you have to have somehow a knowledge of, how can I build MVPs? And that's why I think it's also, we're always in a founder mode. You have to get there, know what are the next best tools, what are new tools that pop up, and then try to also make your team adapt them.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, I always go into meetings with software companies that try and sell to seek, and probably in the same way that Lena does, which is pre-warn that we are terrible buyers of software. We will take a long time to consider them, and we will probably negotiate really hard. I think that's the general attitude of every VC, because you've got to do more with less. But there is always an appetite to explore because of the nature. I probably shouldn't say that just in case software companies are watching this and then I get bombarded. But yeah, I think for me, the tools that I use that I leverage a lot that are third party are actually quite a few and far between. Getro's obviously one of them. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think they were great. So if there are any prospective buyers, you've got to give it a go because it is very useful, especially when you have a portfolio like ours. We've got over 1,000 jobs hosted on that job board at any one time, and it's a huge volume of candidates that go through that board. And a lot of our founders don't have formalized job boards. They have LinkedIn, multiple different sources. You're often using Notion as well. And that's a very tricky thing to centralize, but it adds a lot of value, not only for the founders, but actually for candidates in our ecosystem, right? I think it's a fantastic tool for us to use. I use MetaView a lot. I need to be very candid. That's a portfolio company, but it's an incredibly valuable tool that I use on a daily basis. And again, I think anyone that's not leveraging note-taking apps and tools for their benefit in our domain, where you're meeting people all day, every day, is missing a trick, because you can so easily lose information in this job by not note-taking and categorizing your information. And then lastly, I guess the last tool that we use that's third party is Attio. It's an incredible tool for us, which is a CRM. And this aligns to the quote that you see there, which is we see a lot of value in trying to align our tools between the investment team and our platform teams. I think any platform team out there will understand that the number one goal is to create fund alignment and ensure that there is coordination when it comes to portfolio support. So by aligning your tools and technologies with the investment team, you're in a fantastic place to do that. So any task that I'm doing that I log on Attio, the investment team see, and so the POC is aware without me having to tell them. And I think that async communication is really valuable, especially when there's a lot going on and everyone's juggling 100 different things. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. I think the only other thing I'll add is we've built quite a few tools internally, and we've seen a huge value in doing so. I think there are plenty of things that we can't do, but those that we can, where you can actually customize and build your own technologies, that's a huge value add.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And one thing to add, I mean, as a platform team, you are in a great position, as you mentioned, because for tool providers, I mean, you're kind of the distribution partner, because they, through you, see the access to all your portfolio companies. So I think it's a great way also to engage with companies and give product feedback, which actually Johnny knows I'm also giving a lot to Getro, because we're using it actually in a different way, like using the basic Getro Connect with all the contacts, even to check for angel investors that are across the team and in our network. So we really use it more as a search engine through our LinkedIn contacts. And I think it's really cool that you can do this, and you can do it because for any B2B company, you're like their intro to the portfolio.
Awesome. No, I hope this info has been helpful to everyone who's been able to tune in. And I know we're right at time. And what the plan is we were going to spend a few extra minutes because it's still recording. So for the Q&A questions, just giving people the chance to, if you have to jump now, then no worries at all. You'll get your answers to your questions in the recording. But just for the sake of taking advantage of the time that we have together, I first, as far as the QA questions go, and sort of a nice wrap-up question is if you had any advice for someone who's just starting out in platform, and I know that we have a couple of Q&A questions. I'm not able to see them on my side, but if Kathleen, I'm not sure how you want to manage getting those questions to the group, but we can sort of go through those in our last few minutes together, if that sounds okay.
Yeah, that's great. Do you want to go to the next slide and we'll have them answer what advice? And then I'll put the other questions in the chat.
Perfect.
Okay. I can give this a quick shot. So I started in this role roughly 2 years ago, and the best piece of advice I got was to note everything down that you're doing and say yes to everything that you get asked to do in the first 3 to 6 months. Now, people may say differently to this, and it is potentially a little bit overwhelming. But as long as you have an appetite for hard work, it's a really great way of understanding the full scope of what the role could be. But make sure to vocalize this intention with the broader team and the fund. I was very open with this from day one that my intention was to say yes to everything, even those things that should not necessarily be prioritized, just to understand where the needs were. And then we narrowed the role down from there. I think that's a fantastic way to go, especially if you're a smaller platform team with more flexibility.
Yeah, I don't know if I can second this as a generalist head of platform. This would probably would have been my nightmare, as I'm running so many different or wearing so many different hats. I would have probably end up with 120-hour weeks. But no, for me, I think what was really valuable, and someone recommended this to me in the beginning, was the VC platform community. Basically being a global community, and I love it for the sake of just knowledge sharing. People are so much like startup people. You can ask for a template for something and people will share it. It's really, really collaborative, and gives you access also to other funds to understand how other people are running things. So yeah, for me, really day one would be become part of the VC platform community.
Awesome. No, that's really great to hear. And I have in the chat, in fact, we all should have them in the chat, the Q&A questions. So before we wrap up here, everyone would like to know, how do you think about scaling up your team to accomplish your goals? When do you know it's time to add another person? Do you look for specialists or for generalists?
For me, I would say it depends on what you are. So if you're a specialist, go for more specialists and build out those different domains. But if you're a generalist, it's probably quite tricky to do anything other than that. I think the other thing to seriously consider is like, if it depends what the demand is, right? So if you're just a typical operator from a startup in a platform role, you'll probably be able to cover most topics fairly effectively. But for example, if you're just a talent profile heading up a platform function, you're really going to fall short on other topics. I can speak from my personal experience, knowing, being a specialist in that talent domain. So yeah, that's my take. It's very hard to say without knowing more context.
Yeah, I totally also agree, because I mean, fund size also defines a lot of what you can do, and what you stand for as a fund. Like, what's your brand? Where do you want to go? What are your goals? I believe a lot in, I guess again, like a bit like founder mode. Like, we're as generalist platform people. We only have also a certain amount of strengths where we can support perhaps directly, but in general, I believe our role is to know who are the best people that can support our portfolio founders and then basically make that intro. So we're the gatekeeper to this network and to the solutions for every problem. It can be a playbook, can be one-on-ones, whatever. Yeah, rather than hiring a person, often I would first go with freelancers, and then if you see, okay, that is really not working anymore, then perhaps it's the time to hire a person, or it's breaking the bank. Yeah.
Great. No, that makes sense. And the other question that we have here in the chat is, and I want to say this is directed towards James, if I'm not mistaken. What was the note-taking tool that you mentioned? Just to...
Yeah. So it's called MetaView.ai. And there are obviously a lot of note-taking tools out there, but this is specifically focused around the whole purpose of interviewing, right? So qualifying candidates and even networking. So it's better placed for that specific area. And there are a number of different tools additionally on top of that that sort of enable recruitment support. But for me, the biggest value add is taking notes proactively, so I don't have to type away when meeting people, and then I can centralize that within our CRM.
Awesome, great. And the last question that we have here, and thanks both and everyone who's still with us for the extra time. It's really great to be able to connect with people directly and get these questions answered live with everyone who's still with us. The last question is, let me review this quickly. What strategies can one use in building a community? So ours is currently treated as a conversation on WhatsApp groups, but there's a need to do more. Right now, I'm seeking more knowledge on how to achieve this. So any advice for, the person who sort of wants to go beyond WhatsApp groups?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually doing this now again for our second community, the Clueless No More, which is a community for aspiring scientist founders, so researchers that consider building a company out of what they were doing at uni. I always start with really user interviews, so doing a lot of them. Usually I do roughly 30 to understand, I mean, why are people here? What are they looking for? What is the setup they like? Well, yeah, multiple questions to then basically define how do you run this, what could be possible initiatives that help them with their problems or their wish list. What would be the setup? What is the right channel? What is the right cadence and so on? So I think that works always great. I did the same for the Venture Scout community, but still, I mean, it's always a work in progress. Every initiative, I mean, after like you have your metrics and you see them falling behind or whatever, I'm running surveys and see how can we improve that. So I think it's really, that's why I mentioned for me, it's a really human-centric job, the community building. It goes down to, talking to the people you have to have or you want to have in your community that share the same goal. I hope.
Yeah, I echo what Lena said. Really, I don't think there's much more to be said other than start small, be really specific in what you're looking to achieve out of it, ensure that there's real tangible value add and reason to come back. I think the biggest issue is lack of engagement. So make sure that there's a reason for it, not just for perception that you've got a community. There needs to be a reason for founders or whoever you're trying to attract to engage with you.
Yeah, and also, I mean, tying this back to your own strategy. So that's what I think is really important. As you mentioned, like I think, I mean, engagement is the kind of the happiness metric, I always call it, for your community members. But also, what do you want to get? Because as a fund, and probably you have to also argue for the community in front of your partners or whoever this will be. But what do you try to achieve with the community, and then like what are your KPIs, and being able also to nail that down.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks so much for the thoughtful answers. And if anyone else has questions, I know we're wrapping up with the Q&A portion, but I know that both James and Lena are more than willing to be sounding boards if you have other questions. I know they mentioned sort of being open to if you want to reach out on LinkedIn or sort of anywhere else that you can find them as well. They're happy to sort of share their expertise and insights. So feel free to reach out to them. And thank you so much for joining us for the webinar today. Before wrapping up officially, just wanted to share for any customers or any future customers who are not yet signed with Getro, we are having an end of year special. So if you want to take advantage of this promotion, then in the registration, there will be a link to sign up for a demo with Getro. So yeah, feel free to take advantage of this, 35% off. And thanks everyone for taking the time to connect with us today. I hope this was helpful and useful.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.